Alright peeps, what we're going to do here is show you the installation from start to finish of the Streeter Track front Bilstein coil-over conversion kit. And you're going to need a couple of tools to do this, the most important being a spring compressor. And I'm using an internal spring compressor right here that I picked up from NPD. I think it's like 29 bucks, not a big deal. And I'm going to show you how I use that, how to put a little spacer here, just a piece of pipe and a nut so that we can use it on this car. And the first thing I'm going to do here is get that shock out, and then I'm going to get the car jacked right underneath the lower control arm, put a little tension on that spring before I put the spring compressor in. Alright, so we're going to get that going and I'll show you. Okay guys, so took the shock absorber out. I've got some compression with the jack underneath on this spring. Not much because I don't have my motor in here, but the way that you get the spring compressor in is you just slip it in through here. This is the bottom one that's threaded, and this is the top one that's not. And once you get it in, you can just turn it, a little trick. You just let it climb up the spring here, like so, until you get it positioned properly. Now these are 429 springs, so they're pretty beefy, but I think I'm right about there where I need to be, and I think I'm pretty good on the bottom. And then I'm just going to take the shaft here, go through the top, and get it all set up. And I'll show you what it looks like once it's all set up. Okay guys, so got my spring compressor set up here. And you can see the way I have the arm set. Got my trusty breaker bar, and all you need to do now, just go right up at the top here. Obviously we pulled the cap off and the brace, and just crank it till you get enough compression that you can pull it out. And I'm going to crank this down and then I'll show you what it looks like cranked down. Alrighty, cranked her down, and I went ahead and I let my jack down, and you can see, boom, there we go, spring is out. Pretty painless. Alright, we're going to move on to the next step, and what I'm going to do next is we need to pull all the cotter pins from all the spots that I need to break, from the tie rod end, upper control arm, and then the lower control arm on the spindle. So I'm going to get those cotter pins out, and then I'll show you the next step. Okie dokie. Went ahead, got all the cotter pins out. Now I went ahead, took my rotor, brake caliper, everything off, because I'm going to be refinishing, bead blasting the spindle and refinishing it. You don't have to do that, but you know, something I'm going to do because everything else is going to be new and it looks so good. I can't have that ratty spindle in there. But anyway, went ahead and we pulled all the cotter pins, and I forgot to mention there's also cotter pins underneath this, the strut rod bolts there. So we pulled those out, and what I did here, got all the nuts down to the end, but I didn't take them completely off. And I just know from experience, to make things easier, I just take a torch right here, a little propane torch, and I heat up right around here, right where all the ball joints are. And you just want to be careful, it doesn't need much. And like when I went and did this top one, I didn't even have to do anything, it just popped. So good idea. A lot of these old nuts and bolts, you can persuade them with some heat, just makes it a lot easier. And the other thing I did is I went ahead and I pulled the nut off the front strut rod there. So I've got everything ready to come off. And basically now at this point, all I'm going to do here, just loosen that nut. I'll loosen this bottom one. Now you may need to persuade these with a separator tool. And that just goes right in there. I know a lot of guys don't like to use these, but because you can damage the boot sometimes, damage the ball joint, but I'm not using any of that stuff. We've got everything new. It all comes with the new kit. So, no big deal. Alrighty. There goes that. There's the upper arm. There you go, voila. Spindle removed. Pretty much simple now. The rest is just the 2 bolts on inside the shock tower, and this whole arm will come right off. And then we've got 1 bolt underneath here holding the lower control arm. And then this here, I'm just going to separate with the pickle fork. Just like that. Kind of hard to do this, but anyway, holding the camera and filming, I'm just going to give that a whack. That'll separate. And then we'll go from there. Okay, so we've got the strut rod off. We've got the lower arm out. Like I said, that 1 nut and bolt there. And I'm ready to pull the upper arm out. Took off the 2 nuts right there. This baby should just come right out. There we go. That's it. Got everything out. The only thing left to do is to get this bushing from the front cross member and the strut rod out. And I had a tough time on the other side. I actually had to cut it out with my Sawzall. So I'll give it a quick pop, try and get it out, and if it doesn't come out, I'm going to end up doing the same thing. Just going to cut the rubber and then cut through the metal. And that's the quickest way. Some may come easy. These didn't. Alright, so I'm going to get that out now, and then we'll come back and show you the rest. And one thing I'm going to do before we come back, I'm going to do a little detail work inside the shock tower and get that all cleaned up. And before I put everything back, I'm going to do my rust proofing, my undercoating out of my Schutz gun, all in here. Alrighty. Okay guys, I'm just going to show you a little extra step that I'm doing here. So I went ahead, cleaned everything up in here with a wire wheel, got it all nicey nice. And I'm using a product made by Rust Bullet called Black Shell. And I went ahead and, still wet, put my black shell in here. Cleaned it up all real nice. And that's going to protect it from rusting out. Got rid of all the surface rust. These towers are in really good condition. And then what I'm going to do is take my SEM 2-component seam sealer, and I'm going to seal all along the top here. I'm going to seal that seam, and then I'm going to seal where the tower meets the frame rail. because obviously these are known for rusting out, and that's part of the problem. The water just sits in there in the seam, and bye-bye Charlie over the course of time. So these are some of the things that I'm doing. These are extra steps before I go ahead and install the coil-over conversion. So I thought you'd like to see that.